Hello, I'm Rob Ciampa with Pixability. I'm here with my friend and colleague Francois Gossieaux from Human 1.0. Francois, good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So Francois and I met several years ago in the marketing community. He was sharing the results of his tribalization study, which is the foundation for his book, The Hyper-Social Organization. He talks about Human 1.0 and also CMO 2.0. And we have book 1.0 here, and also on the iPad we have book 2.0. Unfortunately, you can't sign this one,
no,
so we're going to have to figure this one out. So a couple questions for Francois, and we obviously we share a common bond as marketing executives. And you've taken a different path than a lot of us. You started this whole Human 1.0 thing and gone down the research path. What was your trigger?
Well, it's not just research path. It's Human 1.0 is a consulting company that is helping primarily large organizations, although we do startups as well, sort of make sense of how this current wave of innovation powered by the social, how that's impacting innovation, customer support, all aspects of marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And so, so that's how we started the company. Now, we didn't just want to create another consulting company. We wanted to do a couple of things differently. The first one is we wanted to back up. A lot of people that are social media gurus sort of have a lot of opinions, but we wanted to back up our opinions with data. Okay, so not just have opinions. I mean, we have opinions too, but a lot of our opinions are backed by data. And so we've analyzed, companies, how they're using it, in marketing and product development, in terms of, acquiring talent. I mean, you name it. We do the risk, how they're dealing with risk. We do the research. And then the other thing that we wanted to do is in the hyper-social organization, one of the things that we found is that companies that are truly successful at leveraging the social, what they do is they turn their business processes into social processes.
Ah, interesting.
Okay? So by getting people whose job it is not to do something to help them do that job. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with a social consulting delivery model. So sort of a disruptive consulting model. So drinking our own champagne, if you want to.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, you made me, I'm going to ask a question that I didn't actually have on the list. And a lot of the social, you talk about human behavior. And maybe it's a little bit of a curveball, but I found that a lot of the social media experts that are out there, how do I say this, don't necessarily have social skills. So do social skills help in our new world, or can these people hide behind their Twitter handles forever?
I don't know. That's a good question. So the tribe of social media gurus have a lot of people who are not social. Maybe that's an interesting perspective.
It's amazing.
It is true. I mean, in every tribe, you're going to have people that are socially awkward and people that are socially deviant, and and all of that. But we know as humans how to deal with that. And I haven't really thought about it that way. Whether this community has a higher percentage than you.
I hadn't thought about this when I put some of our questions together. The next one is, you speak at length about CMO 2.0, and do you think it's going to be a stretch for a lot of marketing executives to make that transition from CMO 1.0 to 2.0? In a previous session, I talked about a lot of marketers, especially lately, the demands on marketers, technology demands. They have to be tech savvy. They have to be data savvy. They have to be socially savvy. And now you talked with our previous webinar about they also have to be anthropologists. Who's going to make the transition from CMO 1.0 to 2.0?
I think there's some of them that I have interviewed, which are on the CMO 2.0 site, cmotwo.com, but I think a lot of them won't make it. And you're right. I mean, the reason why a lot of them won't make it, I think, is for a variety of reasons. The first one is how they allowed their marketing department to get organized, and
interesting.
So they allowed their whole marketing department to be 100% siloed. You know, when e-commerce came out, they said, "Oh, e-commerce, we don't quite know what to do with that. Let's start a little group on the site and underfund that group and see what happens." And now you have a separate e-commerce group, right? Then there is, you know, digital came around, and they said the same thing. Oh, websites, and you know, and they give a little group, and so now we have a digital marketing group, and now they're doing the same again with social. Oh, they don't understand what social does. Let's underfund a little group on the site there that will do, and they will end up with a social marketing group, which is, and so they allowed their whole marketing department to be siloed, and now they are spending a majority of their time trying to figure out, how do I provide a uniform customer experience as the customer goes through their buying, the sort of the buying journey with us, you know? And when you have silos, you can't do it. And then the other thing is, of course, all the agencies allow them to, you know, allowed themselves to be siloed the same way. So they became digital agencies, they became social agencies, they became e-commerce agencies, you know, and so it's all siloed. So that's one of the biggest hurdle, I think, for marketers to change.
Is that siloification, if I can use that word, is that an indication also of a human feeling, perhaps, or maybe something that's, you know, innate, that we have a reluctance to change, and maybe when we silo things, it's an indication that we're not really changing, we're just adding stuff on? Are we held back by that?
Maybe you're right. But the other thing is, not only have we siloed ourselves, but even if you don't have this problem, marketers need to take marketing out of being a siloed organization within the organization, right?
That's
so you mentioned something that is really important, is data. Right? With all this social, with all this digital, with all this, you know, I mean, we have big data, right? And we should be able to extract actionable insights from that big data, right? But marketers, like you said, don't have the expertise to do that.
A lot of them don't.
They don't. So what do they? So they need to break out of their own organization and start going to someone else. So what are they doing? Some of them are going to agencies, but agencies only see a small sliver of the data. They can deliver on that. Some of them are turning to their CIOs. And the CIOs are like, "You have data? Sure, I'll store it, I'll secure it, and I'll serve it up when you need it." Well, but they don't help them get insights.
I think what's going to change this, because you're hitting something critical. We're getting, as marketing executives and as marketers, you know, we're being asked to account for a lot of things, and nobody's really throwing a lot of rocks at social media. And we've all embraced social media, and you know, I'm part of the whole social media element, but a lot of people haven't said, you know what, is this working? You will say, well, you know what, Francois, I've got out a couple thousand tweets. I must be doing something well, but is it helping me? So we're going to have those challenges.
But it's not just social media; it's leveraging the social. You know, and going back, you know, to breaking out of their own silo and teaming up with the IT department, the CIO, they need to do the same thing with the HR department. You know, making sure they get the right talent, you know, and they need to get involved with the employee brand that is being promoted out there by HR departments, which may in some cases be different than consumer brands. And then when the employee comes in, finds yet a third thing, and that, you know, with the younger generation, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to accept that. And so, you know, marketers, they need to go and become best friend with the customer support person, because you can have the big divide that currently exists between the promises that we make as marketers to our customers and then the deliverables when something goes wrong and you have to call the call center. Yeah. That's just not acceptable, you know, and so it's going to be really hard for a company, for a CMO to change. I think there's great ones out there.
Yeah, and I thought your comment about the Dell customer case was great, and that's for those of you who want to read the book. There's some early stuff on Dell right in the book that hit the spot. So let's go back to the book itself. It's going to hit a nerve for marketers and businesses, and which organizations are really best equipped? Now, you spoke on an earlier webinar that you felt IBM was doing some stuff well. As a former IBMer, it's a big lumbering organization. So, but much like we talked about marketers, and some marketers can make the transition, which organizations are going to be able to do it? What's the DNA of an organization that can make the shift to hypersociality?
It's really interesting. I mean, you look at IBM, you look at Dell, and you can almost say, both of them had near-death experiences, you know, before they sort of made it part of their DNA, right? But then you have more traditional companies like Eli Lilly. You know, there's just an older, I don't remember how many years old, but, you know, fairly old and, you know, Midwestern company with a very rigid culture. And they too are able to change it. So, you know, I don't know if I found a particular DNA that allows you to change it. You have to have the right culture. You know, the thing is, one of the most important human 1.0 inventions is culture, right? Humans developed culture during the Pleistocene time when the climate was changing so fast to deal with climate changes through culture. So we didn't wait until we grew fur. Instead, we developed tools to kill animals, take their fur, and wear it, right? So that's culture. It's tools, it's language, it's, yeah. But, and then, you know, unconsciously driven by evolution, when the climate sort of stabilized 11,000 years ago, we realized that we are the only species that can deal with change through culture, and we created our own change. Everything around you is human-created change. We deal with it through culture. So, as an organization, if you're rolling out a strategy to become more social, to become more innovative, to become whatever it is you want to do, the first thing you need to do is understand the culture in which you're going to roll that out. And do you have the right culture to do that? And if you don't, you need to fix the culture first. It's a change management process, right? The second thing you need to do is, as you're rolling out change, you're going to change the culture, because that's how we deal with change, is through culture changes. And so you have to anticipate how some of those cultures might change and make sure that you don't have pockets of toxic culture that might develop. Or, you know, you might, you know, it's funny, I talked earlier about one of the human 1.0 characteristics is status and power, right? We love status and power because it gives us access to better mates and more food. We actually like to hoard status and powers because it gives access to better mates and more food for our children, good for my gene line, right? So now think about it this way. What's going to happen to companies that are assigning value to knowledge? You will end up with a knowledge hoarding culture. It's just a natural thing to do. And a majority of companies have actually this problem because they put people that are very knowledgeable on a pedestal. That's not the right thing to do. Humans are going to hoard that.
I think we've all seen that everywhere we've worked. There's always the guy who has, you had this data, why don't you share it? Oh, I forgot.
He's being rewarded for that.
Exactly.
You know, and then you develop this culture. So it's fairly complex, but yet fairly simple too, I think, once you start looking at it as, you know, from a human anthropological perspective.
Exactly. Well, one final question, and the old saying is you reap what you sow. And so you're advocating a lot of major changes here. And with the book, there are no, you don't pull any punches here, you attack some sacred cows in the book. So the question is, if we reap what we sow, what do we have to be sowing? What has to be done now? Because like everything else, human 1.0, there's a little bit of evolution and it takes a while.
Yeah.
Academia, businesses, what do they have to start doing now? Because even academia, excuse me, there's some aspect of social there, but not a whole lot. And surprisingly, social is about texting and maybe some Facebook. But what do we have? This is business. This is organization. The business schools aren't necessarily embracing this yet. How do we start?
You're absolutely right. And a lot of what happens in academia, think about it, is related to knowledge and the status that it gives you. That's just, it's just normal. The first thing that companies should think about is how are they rewarding and recognizing people within their company? Because the way you reward and recognize people today is going to determine how your culture will be 1 or 2 years down the line.
But that's going to force us to change a little bit if we change our way of rewarding.
Totally.
And we, human 1.0, we don't like change.
Totally. We don't like change and we deal with it. So you have to approach it like you would approach a real change management program. You don't just go and say, starting tomorrow, we're all going to do this, okay? It's not going to work. I mean, I've seen it so many times in big companies. I've seen it actually twice now in big companies, where the leadership says, we got to change. We're going to be obsolete if we don't change. The rank and file say, yeah, we have to change. and nothing happened because middle management is not blocking it. You know, at first I thought maybe it's because they feel entitled and they want to protect. They're just too busy. They're just too busy. They know how to get their job done in a certain amount of hours and every month, and you can come and tell them whatever they want. The minute you're gone, they're going to go back to doing their stuff the way they did it, right? So what you have to do is you have to find pockets of your organization where you have people all up and down the hierarchy who are going to be receptive to this change, right? So you have to find those pockets. Then you have to go in and say, and by the way, Mr. Middle Manager, I know you're busy. You know, I'm going to take away parts of your work and I'm going to retrain you into how to become a leader rather than a manager. And you know, you need to really approach it and have pockets like that. And then, you know, take those people that are doing it right and recognize them for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. So it's you know, it's something that you have to grow organically.
This is exactly how we saw it. Well, this has been fantastic. An excellent session with Francois. Francois, thank you very much.
Rob.
And thanks for joining us. And after this whole thing, we're going to figure out how to sign Book 2.0. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.